Welcome to this program by Banking Frontiers. Banking Frontiers, as most of you know, is a magazine focused on banking and technology, launched in 2002 and going strong since then. We really have been fortunate to have a lot of participation from the financial sector, banks, mutual funds, insurance, NBFCs. Apart from the monthly magazine, we do big conferences and we also do focused roundtables like this, like 1.5 or 2 hour discussion where there's a high signal to noise ratio. For anyone who's into those kind of ratios, these kind of forums bring in a lot of value in a lesser amount of time in a small space. So it's really fun to do these. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the founder editor of Banking Frontiers. And it's been really a privilege to take up this role, take up this opportunity and to work with such a dynamic industry. 30, 40 years ago, banks were fuddy-duddy kind of organizations and sectors valued for the job security and status. Today, it's nothing less than working in Silicon Valley or some such place. It's really cutting edge, leading edge, very dynamic, huge amounts of transformation. And for a change, the government is after the banks to modernize even faster. So anyone who's working in a bank and interacting with any government department, or whether it's with a regulator, you know that banks are not transforming fast enough according to the wishes of the industry, of the leaders of the nation. Given that background, I am happy to welcome all of you. So we all know that technology, new and newer forms of technology, innovations in technology are coming in on a regular basis, on a daily basis, literally. And the challenge or the transformation in technology is that it's more than just modernization, more than something that's just faster or more scalable. It is structural changes that are happening in technology. And the transformations are at such a pace that you can't even throw away the older stuff so easily, because earlier legacy systems are 10 or 20 or 30 years old. Now something that is legacy something that is 3 years old can also be called a legacy system. And after 2-3 years, even 1-year-old system could be called as a legacy system. Can you throw away the huge investments made just a couple of years ago? You cannot. So there has to be structural innovation, structural transformation that lets the older systems, the newer systems coexist and create value for all the stakeholders. This is a new kind of shift left thinking. Earlier shift left was focused more on technological. Now it is more structural. Now it encompasses more of what regulatory requirements would be, more of what risk factors could bring in, more of what business transformation requires. Technology is now leading these transformations and not just waiting for some business to tell, I want this, I want that. In this context, we are happy to do this roundtable, this interactive roundtable discussion, where we can collectively discuss and understand and learn from each other how this transformation can be tackled, how this structural shift left can be leveraged effectively. We will first begin with a round of introductions.
Thank you, Manoj. Manoj Pillai. I'm the CEO with McLaren Strategic Solutions.
Welcome, Manoj.
Hi, I'm Kirk Chapman, CEO of Omnumi.
Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. This is Munish from ICICI Bank. In the current role, I'm taking care of digital technology.
Thank you, Munish. Welcome.
Priya Dronadula. I'm the Chief Technology and Operating Officer for ANZ Bank.
Thank you, Priya. Welcome. There are 3, 4, 5 mics, I think. Let's move them around.
Yeah, I'm Dimple George from McLaren Country Head.
Welcome, Dimple.
Hi, this is Ram from McLaren. I work in the India office.
Welcome, Ram.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Darius Bijan here, Country Head, AB Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Reyes. Welcome.
Hi, myself Rajesh, working in Central Bank of India, handling digital transformation projects.
Welcome, Rajesh.
Hi, this is Ankala Shamprasad. I'm with State Bank of India. I'm in the new initiatives, taking care of digital, initiatives of the bank. Thanks.
Thank you and welcome.
Hi, I'm Natalie Nopaporn, Program Manager from Omnumi.
Thank you, Natalie. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Robin Huizer. I'm Chief Architect from Omnumi.
Welcome.
Hello, Joseph O'Rourke, product for Omnumi.
Thank you, Joseph. Welcome. Great. So we've done the introductions. Let's have the introductions from our virtual participants.
I was the global CTO. Oh, there's an echo now. Global CTO for JP Chase, retired about a year ago. I'm now on the board for Deutsche Bank, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Legacy4.ai.
Andrew, welcome to this discussion. Sri.
I'm Sri. I'm CTO of Omnumi.
Thank you so much. So here's the first question, which is about constraints. So our topic, while I gave the broad picture about shift-left structural technologies, the focus is more on those specific technologies, tokenization, modernization, AI, agentic AI, and anything else that you see as creating this kind of structural transformation that enables multiple systems to work together, that brings about the right kind of security and governance that is required, that does not skip that. Just because something is a modern technology, let's go and do it. No, that doesn't work in the financial sector. So here's the first question. What are the primary technology and business constraints that banks face when modernizing from legacy systems? How can these be minimized without increasing operational risk or technological risk? So who would like to take this up? Among the bankers, if we can have one person start with this.
Okay, I can go first if you want to. So, it's quite interesting because you see a lot of legacy systems in the banking industry, right? And it's not quite surprising. It's normal to have that. And there are many reasons for this. Usually the banks which are there, there's a huge history of, and that is what also makes them quite important, right? Because the trust that gets established is based on the history of the bank that is there. So given that kind of a background that banks come with, there's a lot of bespoke standard processes which are implemented across multiple platforms. And it's not one single platform that we're talking about. It's the entire ecosystem which is internal to the bank and the ecosystem which is external to the bank. So the adoption of new technology becomes quite challenging from a technical perspective, one, because we need to cater to and identify the impact that it could cause to the ecosystem internally and the ecosystem externally. Plus, heavily regulated. Because it's regulated, there are multiple aspects of the regulations that you have to take into consideration, that by implementing and adopting a new technology as it gets implemented, as it comes in, what are the repercussions that you would have or you would face from a regulatory angle perspective? Unless there is a strong regulatory push to kind of become, to adopt those new technologies which is coming in. For example, when NPCI has created this UPI platform, it became easier for adoption because there was also a regulatory push for the banks.
Right.
However, when you look at agentic AI or any other, digital deposits, tokenized deposits is what you were also mentioning about. So all of these things, there's no strong regulatory push also for the banks to adopt. So to have a very strong business case from a business perspective to put in so much of cost into implementation of a technology just for the adoption of the technology becomes quite challenging from the environment perspective. So when you look at technical challenges, the ecosystem is one. When you look at business challenges, the cost associated is one. And when you look at the risks that come along with it, the strong regulations which we need to cater to with the adoption of the new technology becomes the third key area.
Key pillars you have identified. Who would like to expand on that, or?
I'd just like to ask a quick question too, just from going back. If you look at the technology spend for a bank, always at the top is regulatory. So you really get this regulatory revenue is in there, and the business guys can push this in. So there's really a small pot at the bottom that you have for these new technologies. I know you have R&D groups and so forth, but to get that implemented is a hurdle, correct?
That's very true, because the regulatory spend is something that you cannot avoid. It has to be done. I would put beyond regulatory spend, InfoSec is another big spend where you need to mandatorily kind of put in that kind of cost and investment to secure your environment. So what gets left goes into the innovation, R&D, and adoption of new technologies. So unless there's a very strong regulatory push or ease of implementation of a particular technology, wherein it comes with pre-integrated with the entire ecosystem, it gets quite challenging to have a very strong business case.
Thank you.
I think that's really well. I'm sorry, I think that's really well said. We still have the echo, by the way. The legacy systems, especially in a lot of the US and European banks, because they have these long-term systems that are COBOL mainframe platforms, and they're batch-oriented as well. So when you try to implement something like blockchain or agentic AI integrations, you're running into a batch process that, and these are mission critical systems as well. So it's very difficult to take new technologies and integrate them into these legacy platforms. And as was just noted, the legacy platforms are all systems are instantiation of a business process. So that business process, which has grown up over years, is then built into this batch process. Then you try to integrate real-time processing into that, makes it very difficult to do. What many of the banks and places where I've worked have done is built a, what I would call a sort of facade layer on the outside of it, and then try to take the strangler method to start to pull some of the services off of these mainframe or even monolithic Java batch systems, and try to move them off. For blockchain, as an example, creating a real-time ledger system which gives the intraday positioning, but then still has to integrate to the the GL systems and so forth to do the batch processing and roll up of all those intraday processes. So building that API layer on the outside with the real-time ledger integrating into the blockchain, you still have that that anchor system, which is the GL or the ledger system or the book of record systems, depending upon which area. So eventually you have to tackle those batch systems. This is where I think agentic AI and other solutions like that can help in understanding what those systems do, and help then in transforming them. And so you can move off of these legacy platforms and you can move off of those batch processes and move into more of a component-based architecture, which is then much more flexible, obviously, for integrating with new technologies. But that legacy platform has been an anchor and remains an anchor for many of the banks, especially those that are still running the COBOL mainframe systems.
Got it, Andrew. Thank you so much. Can I request the next speaker to focus a little bit on the second part of the question? How can those risks be minimized? and welcome to the participants joining us. Yes, please. Would you like to introduce yourself? Just your name and organization.
Myself, Umesh Kalyankar. I represent Bank of China. I am in capacity of CISO and VP Technology.
Thank you, Umesh. Welcome.
So I would like to, as the gentleman rightly said, we are using the legacy systems. And it's like, to give an analogy, an old town is being expanded depending on the requirements. So some places, you expand to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. The best way to do it is to make it a planned city, where you require to change everything. And for this, it requires massive investment, massive amount of time, regulatory support. But most importantly, by the time you have finished the project, probably things and the technology would have moved elsewhere. So that's where the challenge is. So you are running on a very fast pace. Earlier days, the technology used to change every 10, 15, 20 years. These days, it is changing in months or days. So even if we create this new planned city with huge amounts of investment, we aren't sure that it will be the latest and the most up-to-date after, say, in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's the reason why the legacy system still holds the fort. You keep on embellishing the separate parts, the MIS, the customer interface, the APIs, or the UPI, or whatever the customer or the regulator requires on top of it, layer it. But the anchor still remains COBOL or BASIC or the Java, or where those systems, the programming of which was done in 1970s.
Got it. So to take your analogy forward, you're saying legacy buildings or legacy structures are becoming heritage structures. They're still valuable.
They are the pillars. They are the, I would say, pillars, and all the additional arms are being built to support whatever, whether the customer requirements, regulatory requirements, technological requirements. But the entire approach should be just like how Apple did the round building. It should be, needs to be, so we require a completely different technology. So
just to follow up on that, these legacy systems, as you've just highlighted, these are mission critical. So JP Morgan Chase is an example, their payment system, which is COBOL mainframe with some assembler thrown in, processes $10 trillion a day through those payment rails. It's a very risky proposition to try to just replace that. So that's another reason why companies have been so slow to replace these legacy systems, because they are mission critical, and as you highlighted, they were written decades ago. So no one's really sure exactly, how they operate, and so replacing them or building a brand new one is a very expensive and very risky endeavor, which is why people have kicked the can down the road, so to speak.
Absolutely,
fully. On top of that, too, when you come into a position, a new CTO does not want to tackle taking down that system. So you always risk ring fence it, because if it's going to be a 5-year program, you don't want to be unsuccessful in delivering it. So I think it gets kicked down the road a lot. Very stable systems. But the developers are getting older and older, and I have good friends whose wives and them are working on them, but eventually they have to, I think, be...
That's where the human angle comes in.
As a human, yes.
Actually, I have a slightly contrary view on this. Reason being, if you look at in India especially, the IT modernization of the banking ecosystem started somewhere around 3 decades back, around 30 years back. So principally, we don't have that kind of a legacy. Like in our bank, we don't have any mainframes or COBOL system which are running. At the same time, the complexity of systems have increased multifold. Because what has happened is that you have launched product layer and a layer. Like initially, we just had RTGS, subsequently we had UPI. So these layers were built over a period of time. So now the IT architecture itself has become a spaghetti. So if I have to modernize it, I have to take one strand of spaghetti and replace it without touching anything, disturbing anything. So that's where the complexity comes in. And possibly there's no straight answer which you have been asking for, saying that whether how we operationally, how we identify and do the operation is. But if we keep things simple, which defines what are our objectives, what we are achieving it out, the complete stake management has done, saying why we are doing this upgrade or why we are replacing a system, and plan it properly, I think so we will be able to manage that risk.
So literally you are redefining legacy as not a system, as an individual system, but the whole spaghetti, the architecture is becoming legacy. So how to modernize an architecture is the challenge then.
I would suggest that instead of modernizing a legacy system, modernizing a legacy process, and if the process can be modernized without affecting an existing system, you are minimizing operational risk because you can set that alongside an existing system, test it, prove it out without essentially affecting a legacy technology or a legacy system.
Can you give an example?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about tokenized deposits in this scenario, you're going to have a legacy system, whether that's a banking core that has demand deposit account, whatever account you have, without disturbing that. How do you set up essentially a new product, which would be a digital wallet product that allows for adoption, allows for a new process, allows for new transmission of money or payments without disrupting the existing thing, which would be a banking core, which is tied into what Andrew said, which is very, very heavy legacy systems that probably carry the brunt of the revenue of a bank itself.
Got it. Sounds good.
Just to add on that, minimizing without, I mean, how can these be minimized? I think primarily for a change to happen, there needs to be a drive, right? The drive is either regulatory or a customer demand. Because end of the day, banks are catering to the customers. And if there is a strong demand for adoption of this new technologies, then it becomes easier. Now, you can't modernize and implement something just for the sake of it, but it has to have an end purpose to modernizing your architecture and technology platforms, right? So if there is a push coming in from the market and there's a demand from the market that, yes, I can sell this product very easily because the end customer who's going to use this product understands the product well. Otherwise, you're also going to spend too much on educating the customer of how tokenized deposits are going to work, what it means to them. So this is a twofold issue. So the customer education part, at least if it is taken care of by any new technologies which is coming in, and also the adoption of integration with the external ecosystem, the only challenge left would be the internal ecosystem to tackle. So it could probably simplify and ease the adoption of new technologies.
Right. So what I've seen is, all of us have seen is, Gen Z is the kind of people, is the customer segment that's driving the requirements for new financial products. And also, especially in India, I've seen it is the fintechs who are partnering with the banks and insurance companies and whatnot, and asking for those modernization capabilities, because I think fintechs probably find it difficult to integrate with very legacy systems. But definitely they want to offer what an SBI offers through their platforms, or what ICICI Bank or any major organization offers. Because ultimately the customer is looking at the brand also. It's not just the product. Who is the brand that is offering the product? Sounds good. I think we have covered this question in depth. Let's move on then to our next question, which I'm bringing up on the screen. What specific frictions most hinder adoption of tokenization technologies, and what practical steps can facilitate smooth integration? So this is specifically about tokenization. And perhaps I would like our partners, McLaren, to give a 1-minute summary of what is tokenization, so that everyone is on the same page, right? Can we do that?
I mean, in a nutshell, tokenization is digitizing anything. So I think you have tokenized deposits, which is the main topic. Tokenization takes place in central bank digital currencies, whether that's wholesale or retail. Tokenization can take place in hard assets or real assets, homes, property, etc., gold, commodities. Tokenization is really just taking anything and then building a token to represent that. I think I'll use it in front of bankers who talk to regulators, but the clearest illustration of that is if you go to a casino, there's a reason they put tokens on the table and not rupees or dollars or engagement rings, because that money moves faster and it's easier to be able to tell what everybody has. And so the same principle really is defined by the tokenization of assets, is how do you standardize something, divvy that up the way you want to, and move that at a velocity that hasn't been seen in the past.
Got it. Thank you, Kirk. Can I request SBI to give what you see as a low-hanging use cases for tokenization in India before we get into this question? And from the point of view of the banks and perhaps also from the point of the regulator.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as tokenization is concerned, at this point of time, we are doing on the payment side actually. So that was the starting point. But we just started CD tokenization very recently. That was the second point. But overall, it is still in the pilot stage. We yet to get the full-fledged regulatory, approvals to go ahead and in the full bloom. So that is the point.
But what are the business use cases that the bank or the ecosystem envisages for the next, let's say, couple of years?
Yeah, there are many use cases. The most important use case which the government is looking at, as banks also looking at, is probably the subsidies, whatever, a lot of subsidies are being disbursed over the billions and billions of dollars equivalent. So those things, they want to do it through this tokenization. So that is on the payment side, actually. But the concept of the asset tokenization yet to evolve on the larger perspective of the retail side. As far as wholesale side, yes, we initiated the CD tokenization alone at this point of time.
Globally, what are the use cases that are really becoming popular? Anyone?
Definitely FX trading, multi-currency. Those are, ones that are being leveraged across and implemented in many different institutions, JP Morgan Chase, et cetera.
Yeah. And we are seeing use cases both within the financial services space as well beyond, right? Something that we started seeing in the US is money market funds that are getting digitized, tokenized. Both Bank of New York and Goldman Sachs have started doing this as a part of a partnership. We saw the same thing being announced by Barclays. We saw deposit tokens coming in that are linked to currencies with Hong Kong dollar, USBCs, and US dollar linked deposit tokens coming in. But that's on the financial services space. I'm also starting to see some very interesting use cases around tokens that are used for subsidies is a great one, but in the commercial space, right? HSA accounts in the US, which is basically healthcare spending accounts where pre-tax dollars are set apart for healthcare-related expenses. Now, tokenizing that has become an area of interest, and we discovered this while having conversations with partners. Now, why is that important? That's why I wanted to just highlight it. Today, when you try to process these HSA transactions, the onus on proving that it was used for healthcare-related expenses is on the administrative team that is governing those spends, similar to subsidies, right? And that cost itself is higher than what it takes just to manage that account. So you're actually spending more dollars in administering that HSA account as opposed to using those dollars for something that is healthcare-related. So just taking that transaction and putting it on a ledger makes it verifiable, makes the settling process much more simpler. And so the cost benefit itself is good enough to pay for it. So that's just an example, and we're seeing several such use cases emerge. But the key barrier to all of this has been the lack of a regulatory framework, because every underlying asset needs to have some kind of authentication added to it, right? It could be a regulatory framework, it could be a custodian, it could very well also be just an attestation process. But once that regulatory framework falls in place, like what we have in the US, we will start seeing more and more use cases coming into it.
Thank you, Anuj. And are the regulators pushing for it in India and other countries? Because that if the cost benefit is what you are saying, and I'm guessing that the cost benefit is what the government of India is looking all in terms of subsidies, then generally, is there a push globally towards tokenization from the regulators' perspective? Or is it more from the perspective of the bankers to make the whole technology ecosystem more cost efficient?
If you look at most of the states government in India are promoting that. They take time to understand what is the value which is being driven, but what they want is the visibility as to how the money is being spent, first of all. Once they know how they are being spent, then subsequently they can put contracts saying that if I'm giving the funds for this purpose, they should be used for that purpose itself. The visibility, and the next is the actual usage part of it. So these are the important. And second, one use case, anyway, card industry has been working on tokenization for quite some time. With the data privacy acts coming in, and we are looking at that, how data within the ecosystem itself can be tokenized, whether it's our internal systems or across various entities, because we exchange a lot of data, that how we can tokenize that, that is important factor also.
Correct.
So
API usage is growing leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I'll not maintain copies of data, because in many systems, you maintain same customer information in 10 systems, 20 systems, and if it leaks out, you never know that which was the source of it. So if I can tokenize it and share with our internal ecosystem as well as partners, so that is one area which we are exploring.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So any particular friction to start tokenizing? Any bank has done any experiments? So we have one more participant, Nitin, here. Welcome, Nitin. Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself to everyone. Just your name and your organization. Your name, I announced.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nitin Gupta. I represent Qatar National Bank here. Brief about me. I've spent almost 20-odd years in the transaction banking domain in the Indian banking industry across the multinational banks, private sector banks, so on and so forth.
In terms of tokenization and the use cases, is there something your bank or the banks in Qatar overall are looking at?
Sure.
And are there any frictions that really need to be looked at?
Since you were talking about frictions, so I would rather stay generic at the moment. So all the moment we talk about legacy systems, so we also have to look at what kind of cores we have been using as a bank and whether these are compatible in terms of bringing the technologies like tokenization into place, because the traditional core banks, core processes which are there, which are the backbone or the heart of the banking data, I would say processings or the storage. So they work on a batch mode basis. So the moment we talk about tokenization, which is a real time and quite a systematic way of record keeping, so that is something which at times what we have noticed on the bank side, especially there is a lot of friction which comes vis-a-vis the back-end systems, which has been inherited over the period, and the banks have been using it. And the moment you talk about any change, any modernization, so we have to see whether we can bring both the technologies, the existing versus the modern technology, to work co-terminus or to work in parallel to begin with, so that there is no stoppage of the business as usual. So that is the main friction or main challenge which we have noticed between the project management or the IT versus the business teams who would want to maintain the business continuity. So whether both the things can run in parallel, that is something which all depends on the existing legacy systems. And this has been one of the major friction which we have noticed.
Got it. Good point, Nitin. So the simple question to this point is, Is the answer in the technology or in human skill? So how is this friction going to be overcome? Do you get some techie experts who can minimize the friction? Or is there a standard technology that you can deploy? Can we have some?
So, in my opinion, it's not the technology, the major friction as far as our bank is concerned. It is the resistance to change on both the fronts, and on the internal customers as well as staff members, both we can say. So that is one big friction. Second one is scalability. Scalability also, why it is a friction, because people not used to it, this kind of new, the systems, whatever we are putting across. Most of them, they don't know, they don't understand, and we need to go personally to make them to understand what is this digital method of payment kind of thing, something like. And it takes a lot of time, so that is one big friction, we can say that. So technology, anybody can take care of it, but on the other side, on the business side, actually, if you look at it, there's a big friction there. The scalability may be a little bit troublesome.
Am I guessing, or am I right or am I wrong, that the word tokenization conveys a very technical perspective and people may be scared just because it sounds too technical? Is that the case?
Definitely it is, and with blockchain, it became too much popular or too much abused. Yeah, so.
And the most important also, the resource constraints also. There is one of the frictions, the resource is also very important to get. That is one. And then obviously you need to have a lot of money to be spent on that. So these two are also can be considered as a frictions, currently.
Thank you. So I'm saying on one side, as you rightly said, it actually sounds like a jargon and it sounds too complicated. And more often than not, we don't even realize that in day-to-day dealings, we already have been using a lot of use cases which have been the outcome of the tokenization. So, the very simple thing which we normally use in India is the card thing we were discussing some time back. So we all have been using it, but if you ask somebody whether that tokenization has been the prevalent practice and which all streams in India we are trying to adopt. So yes, you will find that, gap because it sounds too complicated or too, I would say, on the, tech side.
So my question to Kirk and Andrew is, those examples, and to the team from Onam, how do you pronounce it? I'm not sure. Omnomi, okay. Where it has been successful, how was the friction, different kinds of friction overcome?
Yeah, I can jump in here.
Yes.
The blockchain solution at a large bank in the US has been on a long journey. And I agree that, because it's blockchain and you hear Bitcoin and everything else, that you start to run into these frictions, as was highlighted from business teams and clients and so forth. What really turned the dial on the adoption and leverage and usage of the blockchain across some of these larger banks in the U.S. was the business value and leverage, which then started to drive more adoption. So, for instance, you end up with BlackRock and Siemens and so forth, who are seeing value from intraday processing, so intraday repos, doing cross-border settlements in a near real-time fashion. And that value of being able to leverage tokenization and leverage blockchain to do this real-time processing, where prior it's 24, 48, 72 hours to do that processing, it provided real value to the business, to the business clients. And that then started to change the whole dynamics of hey, we want this. And so it really became a business push, which then led to the further build out and leverage of the blockchain solutions. But as we highlighted earlier, all those blockchains that permission blockchains that have been built, they're still having to interface with those legacy systems for for the actual settlement. So you're running this as a sort of off balance sort of two books, if you will. You've got the book of records that the blockchain is running with in that real-time ledger, but then it's having to then work within the construct of the legacy platform. So there's always these maintenance windows where the legacy system is down, and this does drive some risks. But the large banks like J.P. Morgan Chase and Citi and so forth have gotten past that, through many years of working through this, keeping these sort of dual systems running. But eventually, those legacy platforms have to be remediated and migrated off of.
Thank you, Andrew. So to me, it sounds like a chicken and egg problem. In the sense, do you do a small project to make it viable, to show the benefits? Or do you do a large project like Andrew said, so that the benefits are visible? Because there is friction. And the example that Andrew has given, that when the project is big, when the benefits are big, a few $1 billion or whatever, then that friction gets overcome. But again, how to start? So that sounds to me like a chicken and egg problem. Is that right? Or is there some other way to look at it?
I'll speak up here. So I'm going to speak to something you already said, though. So I think what you're hinting at is the business case should drive the technology decisions, and so the technology should ultimately support the business case. The frictions that may be here have been solved in other regions simply by regulatory clarity. If you do a project now, there's not enough regulatory clarity. That might be a waste of money, perhaps, if your regulators say that that's not going to be allowed. Whereas if you do have regulatory clarity, you can have confidence when you're implementing a business or a business case that will have long-term effects. I think the other thing I would say is from a technical friction standpoint, we've implemented something very different than what Andrew's implemented, which is much more on the retail side. We're having blockchain or a digital wallet or tokenized deposit. You do have to integrate with third parties. So integrating with existing KYCs and integrating into a common CRM that has nothing to do with chain, but is off chain, or feeding that into a common transaction monitoring or fraud system and be able to either decision or send events off of that to the different departments in your bank to be able to care for your customers. And so I think the friction can be overcome and you can minimize risk, but ultimately the business case, if you can't find either a way to generate new revenue through new customers or new product, or have significant operational efficiencies, which is what I think Andrew is describing, then it's really hard to justify any of this going into a bank.
Sounds good. I think we have covered friction in sufficient depth. If we do more, we'll have to do a PhD in friction. Can we move on?
No.
Just
on
a very brief comment.
On the possibility part, it's just a thought. We have seen success in digitization because, the banks are not in the same olden days yet where you're still maintaining the books. There's a huge journey that every bank has already overcome, right? And we are in a state of, a good, excellent digitized environment that we are already working on. But that's possible only when you have a consortium or all the banks come together along with the regulator to create a product. So all the successful, faster adoption of certain technologies that you see has been adopted because it is evolved and it is designed and it has been piloted with a consortium of banks and the regulator also part of it. So those use cases you've already seen success and moving forward. But where it is independent products with very small pilots, it's not something that you would want to adopt for a large scale.
And also, there are enough projects in any bank, hundreds of projects. So which projects get priority is also an issue. There's one CTO, one CIO, one chief digital officer, if it's a big bank. And who manages 100 projects is an issue. Again, the people issue. One of you mentioned it's a people issue. Moving on. What outstanding technology and business issues remain top of mind for leaders? We kind of covered this, but if anyone wants to add the leadership perspective on this, we talked about business, we talked about technology. What about, I'm just thinking aloud, neobanks, digital banks? Are they thinking tokenization as a pillar to begin the organization? Have they done that? Or any other kind of organization? Yes, Priya.
All digital native companies, I would say, when I say digital native, the new age startup companies and neobanks that you talked about, or any new banks which are getting established, or non-banking financial institutions which are getting established in the current time, I think it's easier for them to adopt because there is no history or legacy to watch out for.
Can I request maybe Rajesh or Umesh to throw some comments based on what we've discussed so far?
It's on, yeah. So one of the point what we need to look at is scalability. Now, what the legacy systems, they are not scalable per se, like they are on old architecture. Scalability is a major issue. So moving that to a scalable infrastructure, like microservices-based architecture or containerized architecture, that kind of core modernization is a challenge. So like all the business logics are built into that old core banking, old legacy systems. So following up the core, that is an option like that banks should think about now, like moving the logics out, and core banking or that core systems should be used for transaction processing only.
Makes sense. That absolutely makes sense
Yeah.
because there's a business case and a running system, a running use for that.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'd like to add on that. Basically, we also need to see what the ROI, the clear ROI is. Also, the regulatory framework. In most of these cases, the regulatory framework keeps on changing, or there's no strong kind of guidelines from regulations. That's quite important.
But to take Rajesh's point, what you're describing does not require any regulatory.
That's
angle.
bank's call.
That's
So
completely
bank's call,
internal.
and looking into future, the scalability is going to be a big issue because now UPI has come, central bank digital currency is coming. All these systems are hitting the core, and most of the banks who are running old legacy systems like COBOL and most of the logics are written in the core itself. So we need to hold out the core so that scalability can be addressed. And second, there can be a middleware that can be that can handle the business logics. That's an option. Then API, initially building an API layer, that can be a stopgap arrangement, but in a long time, should be a modern core. That's an ultimate solution for this. That's what
I'll just add few, on top of it. And he's picked up the, my name is Anup Purohit. I'm ex-banker technologist. Last, I was with Wipro as the global CIO. Presently, I would say on a professional break or being away from working. Thanks, Anuj, for inviting me over here. Rajesh, you have picked up the very relevant point. While I'm on a professional break, I'm in touch with a lot of bank CEOs and CIOs in last few months. And that's something which is constantly bothering them. So what has happened is, and I'm going to use few words which probably not to demean anyone, but most of the banks want to get into the journey of follow the core. they have realized over a period of time, most of the system of record owners have become kind of a digital mafias. So it becomes very difficult for them to convince them to do what banks want. Banks have now realized that over a period of time, all these big giants have taken the domain expertise from the bank, have taken the money from the banks, and then they have become so big that today they don't care about the bank. So this concept of follow the code has started to actually extract the logics out from them and create their own transformation layer. So basically two important ingredients for future, which today reside for whatever right or wrong reason is inside the system of record, has to move out. The first one being the data. And most of the banks have started the data lake or a lake house concept where they're taking the data out. But honestly, not making the utmost use of it, only from the MIS or the regulatory reporting perspective. The second important thing is the logics. What he rightly said, were built into the core systems. Now banks want, and including NBFC, wants to remove this logic and create their own transformation layer. They are calling it as an ABS, which is kind of a API banking system. This is the one word which I've heard lately, where they want to get all these logics out, build their own IP, so-called as, and not going to the big players of the world. So this is another concept which is coming out in India, of talking to the small fintechs to build this core logic so that the IP and the source codes remains with the bank and not with the OEMs, like whatever mistakes were done in the historical era and that. So this is something which is picking up a lot of steam in the recent past. In my conversation, I know for sure one of the largest bank in India has already embarked on this journey. I know few small banks who are getting a universal license are also embarking on this journey. Pieces follow the core, create their own transformation layer or API banking layer or whatever the niche which will differentiate them from the rest. So that's something which they are working on. So yes, easier said than done. It's going to be a task for them, but they have to take a stand right now. And as I said, lots of them have already got onto this journey in India, at least.
And I agree with you, because of regulations, especially US banks have pulled out the data, and we are using a lot of data lakes because regulatory reporting has to be done. Yeah. So that's been done. But yes, it's that diving into those systems to get the logic out.
And that becomes a problem because building that logic into the system is again kind of making a elephant dance in the room. That's becoming difficult. So best thing they're doing is trying to get the data out. But again, I'm saying that's one important need, regulatory compliance, to do the reporting. But I'm not seeing enough use of data to grow the business at this point in time. I've been in the bank, as I said, for the last 25 years, including me sitting on the chair of CIO. I don't think I have made enough use of the data. But I think the time has come that everyone is getting into now thinking, at least they have started thinking. I'm not sure about the MNCs, but at least the domestic banks in all the areas, including the public sector banks, whom I'm talking to a few of them, they're thinking in a similar line.
And a quick question with ROI. If it's not going to come from the business to drive it, can the technology come in and make a business case for, is there a return and how long could it take? I know it's always back and forth. Everything's driven by the business, but can technology come in and say, this is the return you'll get in the next several years?
Ideally, technology should be at the fulcrum driving the business together. But unfortunately, all said and done, still the technology is considered as a support function. I'm talking about the hard truth, being a CIO for 25 years. Still business considers them as support function.
And data was supposed to change that, right? You were supposed to become a little
Absolutely.
bit of a
I agree with you.
I know.
So on the lighter side, in a conference, CIO is the leader, but in the office, there's still like a back office role.
Absolutely.
Is the duality in the front and in the back.
And I tell you, this is the fact. And also nobody, when it comes to crossing or probably if there's a gray area the regulators, I would say 99% of the CIOs won't take any call. They will just be on the defensive side.
That's an interesting point. So that brings to the point of trust, which you have indirectly referred to in the entire financial ecosystem. How trustable, so the generic question is how much, let me rephrase that. How can trust be increased in the newer technologies that are coming in so that the business owners, the regulators, they are willing to take the bet? What is the role of the CIO? What is the role of the technology vendors? Is there a role for technology consultants? And if you look at fintechs, and neobanks and neo anything, digital natives, they're running on this latest version of the technologies. And there's a good number of customers who are trusting them. But what is required to make that trust more widespread?
I think when you want to apply enterprise trust, you limit also your market share that you can have. I think when rolling out blockchain, you actually hope that a lot of dApps and wallets and other applications such as Wallet Connect will make use of your blockchain in order to increase revenue and grow an ecosystem of new ideas. If you apply enterprise trust, you're limiting more and more the outside world to interact with your blockchain because you're putting more and more restrictions on top. And in the end, the only one that can use your blockchain will be your own organization. And then you have to ask yourself, did I reach my goal?
Thank you for that. Let me ask, Rajesh was talking about hollowing the core. Is there an issue in a typical bank, not just your bank, about trusting these new technologies to do what was already running as a business use case? How do decision makers, board members, get the assurance that the newer technology can be trusted? Is it subjective? Is it based on some research report? Is it based on use cases elsewhere? What really works?
Yeah, mostly it is subjective only, like you said, like from board to board, and that based on the members, it may vary. But the thing is that publications from Gartner or some Forrester, those can help in convincing that board. And the other parties, they always look into other banks and global banks, what they have done. So that's a cue we can take to convince the board and what's happening across the globe.
I'm just wondering, where do global banks look?
Actually, if you look at board,
who do they look at?
If you look at board, is not concerned about trust part of it. If you are able to explain them what is this technology all about and what is the objective and how the business is going to benefit from them, I get board will trust that. Board will not bother about what technology you are bringing in, how you are delivering it out. But if I'm reaching the end goal with a proper objective and a profit, I guess they understand that.
And mostly this on ROI, return on investment.
So so you're saying in general there is a level of trust about technology. It's just that ROI kind of factor is more important than the trust in the technology. So like we buy the latest phones or the latest cars or whatever latest, we're really not waiting for that thing to be running for 1 or 2 years before I buy the latest iPhone or latest laptop or whatever.
I think you need to find a balance. The balance that you still have customers attracting and reach the masses and reach your goal, and still offer a very secure platform. So you have to make choices what you're going to expose or not.
I also want to add here to give a different perspective to this trust piece. So even if, let's say, board is aligned, so everybody understands there that technology is essential, like technology, these kind of, whether it is API, whether it is tokenization, whether it is, let's say, piloting AI, UPI for that matter. However, we all understand that we also, while we on one side we want to scale it, but we still want to go safe. So we also have to look at from the end consumer perspective, whether we are able to bring the end consumer also at the same pace in terms of devising or imbibing trust on them. So like some use cases or some anecdotes, if I have to share here, while we tried, at times we try sort of convincing the corporate customer in terms of taking the blockchain or digital ledger technology backed systems or some product offerings, then they would want to know how beneficial and why this only needs to be taken. Why can't a traditional, simply a URL-based subscription-based model or something of that sort? So net, what I'm trying to say is, one, yes, we have to be considerate and we have to see whether board is able to bring the trust on those kind of offerings. Second is the end consumer, for whom we are building these products and the solutions or the platforms. So their trust and their confidence and their interest also needs to be seen and needs to be generated and brought up to the pace.
So maybe I'll add a few things. So one thing is business focuses on outcome and not on the technology. While it's a true statement, but at the same time, business still feel happy, oh, okay, I'm using AI for doing this, I'm using blockchain. They don't understand anything, they don't care about what it is, but they want to use the name. Like you said, latest iPhones and stuff. So they want to use the name, but they don't understand, and they don't have a patience. They want the best outcome at the fastest possible time. And I'm not making this statement because I am talking to a few of my friends who are CIOs in the largest bank in India, and I'm seeing that like hollow the core, to get rid of the old legacy core if they are changing. Obviously, the CIOs have to ensure that they don't impact the current business, but at the same time, get the new product ready so that they replace with the better quality and the better features and the better speed. Because if you tell the business, I'm going to replace the existing core banking with the new core banking, for example, which is a homegrown, if one of the bank is trying to build that, the challenge which the CIO facing is, okay, you are building it, I don't care, but I don't want to I want to ensure that the current features are there, which obviously won't be, but at the same time, the patience level are less in terms of that. Can you do it in less than a year's time? Now, you can't replace a core banking of a largest bank in just 1 year's time period. So patience is not there. Trust factor comes in when the technologies, if you look at the peripheral technologies to build a simple AI use case and give them, they would love to do that. If they can, that can help to increase their top line or improve their bottom line, they would want to do that. But the time window which they are willing to invest is very, very small. They want a quick outcome. Very few business are say, okay, I'm going to wait for 2 years and show me the roadmap that you are going to, from now until 2 years, you will have a technology architecture which will be a differentiating factor for the bank for the next coming 10 years. As I said, I'm seeing one, I was in a meeting with one of the CEOs a few months back, and though that is going to be his last year in this bank, but he said, I'm going to invest in this to get the bank ready for next 10 years. And he's doing that. But at the same time, his N-1, N-2, they are not giving that enough time and window and for the CIO to build these things. So it's a chicken and egg situation, to be honest. Trust will take a lot of time for business to get a business. But ultimately, they are the sponsors for all these initiatives.
So bottom line, trust is not a simple equation. It's complicated.
Absolutely.
It's not E equals MC squared.
Can I add to that? I mean, nobody gets fired for picking FIS or Fiserv or Jack Henry. Nobody gets fired for those choices as a CTO or CIO. But I think in the context of modernization, tokenization, you just said something such as, I'm going to replace the core. What does that mean? Are you placing a core contains a number of banking products. And so if we talk about tokenization or blockchain, when we say we're going to implement that, what does that mean? And how much of, I would say, legacy or standard bank third parties can we use when we're implementing that to build trust? You don't want to come in and say blockchain for X. You say, hey, I want a blockchain for this feature, but we're still going to use our existing KYC system. We're still going to use our existing third-party fraud. We're still going to use our existing reporting system, whatever we use to Fed, and being able to incrementally build a new product without coming in and saying, hey, trust me, I'm replacing this, and the clarity around that.
So again, one thing which Priya rightly said on the blockchain kind of a technology, it's not a product, it's just an ecosystem. And for that, it's important that the regulator and the bank comes together. I'll tell you, I was the first one on 1st Jan 2019 to implement a blockchain with Bajaj Electrical as an anchor in the distributor supply, the entire supply chain piece in Yes Bank. Unfortunately, while one customer was there, I was not able to leverage and make it across the ecosystem because a lot of banks, one, were not willing to be part of it. Post which we went to RBI and we actually created a group of 10 banks and headed by Axis Bank with Infosys, Edgeware, their entity, and we actually came together to start building that. We tried that approach as well. Unfortunately, even that fizzled out. Particularly when it comes to the blockchain technology, the entire external ecosystem, not the ecosystem within the bank, but the external ecosystem has to be ready to work together. And that's where we failed to kind of get the blockchain in the Indian banking ecosystem. We did it right for at least, I would say, 3 years. We were part of that forum, regularly meeting, but then it fizzled out and then nothing came out of it.
Do you feel like that endeavor and bringing together a consortium like that now would have possibly a different outcome than it did back then?
As you rightly said, we need to get something from regulators. So, for example, RBI has now RBI Hub. If they are willing to invest time into this, along with so RBI is pretty open in terms of trying out new technologies, which is why they have created this iHub. Sahil is the new CEO. They are willing to try it out. So maybe a session with him to get few of the banking CIOs together and try this out. I am sure this will, because the digital currency is something which RBI is also in CBDC is something which they are already working on. So we need to figure it out how we can partner with RBI, but we will need a regulator. So is it possible? Absolutely. But it has to come down with some anchor bank who is willing to drive along with RBI, then the other people will get in. But if you expect some bank will on their own go and then reach out, they won't do it. Because I'm telling you, it's a lost battle for them.
I was just thinking, is the tide starting to change, especially with sort of the adoption in the U.S. with Citi and JP Morgan? Is it a better climate now than it was?
We can try it out. I suggest, Anuj, we spoke about it.
Yes.
I can get at least 6 or 8 CIOs together and then we can figure it out. We can.
True. In fact, and if I just pull the conversation back into the topic we started with, right? Trust and security. I think that's a core aspect, and this is where I would go back to the basics, right? Today we have all the core elements to instill trust, regardless of the stack that we are going after. Starting with, the core infrastructure. You have zero trust security principles that can be put in place, right? Which makes sure that the implementation that you have, be it networks, be it tokens, be it principles that you interact with, they need to have cryptographic assurance and trusted platform for execution. So that can essentially seed at the core platform level, trust and security. Then you start going to the next level. You need to have some kind of programmable guardrails. I think, Kirk, when you guys implemented USB-C, while there were regulatory infrastructure in place, even before you brought that in, you had put in compliance checks. It was a compliance-first platform. So anything that you implement needs to have compliance embedded as part of the core infrastructure, and it has to be programmable abilities baked into it. And the last but not least, I think this is where your point becomes very valid, right? Shared infrastructure for compliance, which is where regulators would come into play. And in fact, I was very enthused by seeing what the RBI team is doing around lending. So again, the same problem we talked about, right? Unified lending interface, right? ULI, which is now making credit data available across all lenders, building an ecosystem, whereas one provider alone will not be able to gain the trust of your consumers to be able to do this. Having an ecosystem there definitely makes a difference. So if you just go back to those 3 points, right? Use the principles and the basics that are already in place, zero trust architecture, have the programmable guardrails, and then of course, have shared infrastructure that is blessed by the regulator, will essentially help you fast track both trust and security.
So I want to add one bit to the trust angle, which is that earlier it was not the case, but now is the case that any new technology that comes in, how hacker-proof is it, is an issue. Earlier that was not the case with PCs or laptops or your basic networking. And that is something, because the hackers are now moving as fast as, or if not faster, than the good guys, let's say. But to summarize this whole trust thing, I think what we have figured out collectively is that trust is multifaceted. you really need to understand trust before you start talking trust. Because to him, trust means something, to her, trust means something, to him, trust means a set of things. To me, trust could mean a set of things. And unless everyone in the room is on the same page, everyone on a project is on the same page, it will be like six blind men and the elephant who know that story. They all disagree about the same thing because they have different perspectives. So friends, we have had a long discussion. Let's try to wind up in another 10 minutes if that's good for everyone. We can continue discussing in a more relaxed atmosphere, over drinks, over to one-to-one, over one-to-few. Let's come to the elephant in the room, if I may. That is new revenue streams, right? While friction and trust and hollowing the core and increasing efficiency, all these are a given. The real opportunity is new revenue, not just selling one more credit card, but a new kind of financial product, or expanding to and there's a huge segment of the population that is not financially included. What are their requirements? Do they want a traditional savings account or a traditional card, or they want something more meaningful for them? And that's where the whole world, if you literally see, except for 10% of the population, is poor. They want more customized financial services, whether it's India or Bangladesh or Africa or South America or wherever, or many parts of the US and Europe. So how can newer technologies with better efficiencies and better security facilitate newer revenue streams? Because if the existing financial organizations don't do that, I think someone else will. There are n number of startups who want to do that. And because the financial organizations that exist and are licensed are trusted, I think the customers would prefer to have the newer products, the newer services from the existing players. Any thoughts anyone has on new revenue streams using these new technologies, particularly tokenization? What do you envisage? So I'm asking you to imagine if you want to open up your minds, think outside the box. Please.
I've just got a quick one. It's not outside the box, but somebody had mentioned governments. I think Manish, you had governments want to see where money is being spent. There was a use case we had with a country. They were going to give out payments to, I think, everybody over 16, and they wanted a ring fence to make sure that they spent the money within a 6 mile or a 6 kilometer area. I don't know if that was the right amount, but a lot of the people in the country were underbanked and not banked. So the ability to track the money, the ability to control how they spend it. Our platform, we kind of had, this was our this is the beginning thought for the platform, was to put these rules on so somebody could receive money and spend it, and could spend it at certain industries or so forth. But I think reaching that population that are don't have a bank account was a big proponent for us when looking at the platform.
Programmable money in general is.
We already implemented it, the programmable part of it, where there are 4 different programs we used to do on each token. One is geographic, this one, that is geotagging, we did it. And then second is putting across the purpose-bound token, which is MCC code, we'll put across. And specifically, if somebody wants a specific address to be paid, VP address we'll put in. And the most important, which everybody is interested, especially on the government side, if the token is not spent within the time frame has been given, the money has to go back to the source account. So that was the biggest, technology innovation here. And we successfully tested it, and it is working fantastically. So we did one pilot project, which is unheard of till date. It's a tenant farmers, the farmers who don't have the land across the country. There are so many, almost 25% of the tillers in India don't have a land in their own name. So they don't get any traditional, what do you call, the money from the banks. So obviously they go to the money lenders who put a lot of interest amount, like roughly around 20% kind of thing. So what we did is we programmed in such a way that these guys can't spend that money anywhere else except two important things. One is buying a fertilizer, and then buying seeds and pesticides. These are the three things. We programmed in such a way that the tokens were paid at a specific shop or within the geotagging. That means in the same village kind of thing, and it has been implemented. That is one major revenue stream what we are looking at. And the second one also, what we are looking at, the subsidies, what we are talking about right now, there is also a very big revenue stream as we see as a business case for us is a huge, it's a scalable in that fashion where we can able to give the payments to a large number of individuals, where we get some kind of commission from for executing the payment network systems. So that is also a second important, this one. And in future, what you're looking at is what do you call the KYC, the tokenization of the KYC part of it. Probably we have the largest customer base, so we will be putting across in that perspective. These are the few things what we are looking at.
Very interesting. It's already within the box.
There
are cases. Yes.
I was thinking to the example of what Kerr gave in the beginning with tokens at the casino. Today you have the gaming industry, and as you all know, you buy a lot of stuff during a game, at least I do. But all that profit goes to Visa, MasterCard. We don't see anything. So why don't we host a stablecoin platform, and all the revenue comes to your bank, and you solve immediately the theft of tokens, which is imminent in these games. A new revenue stream.
That's outside box thinking, yes.
Now, if we were to look at revenue slightly differently, I think the entire tokenization will, reduce the operational cost many fold and increase the efficiency by many fold. That itself can be a revenue stream. I mean, in a different kind of thing, because it will be P&L accretive and much more nimble, faster, foolproof, and scalable.
Right.
So currently, as our friend from SBI says that imagine the amount of efforts it would require to monitor that the person spends only on fertilizer, seeds, or pesticides, and that gets done automatically. So huge operational efficiencies can be built in. And similarly for all kinds of subsidies or targeted payments, or for that matter even any other use cases. So operational efficiency, I would say, can itself be, even if there is no other revenue accretive product, tokenization and the operational efficiency will itself be a big driver for tokenization.
That of course it will be. So the existing use cases are always there.
Same here. That's what I was trying to say.
More on something new, and on a very positive note.
No, if you look at even in subsidy, I'll try to cover that itself. In subsidy itself, how the government is gaining from that is, from an efficiency perspective, earlier they used to disburse the fund and people may use or not use it out. In this case, when you tokenize it out, only when the token is being used, that point in time you are actually disbursing the funds. The money still remains with the government itself. So that helps them to monetize as much better.
I think subsidies are one big area where this will help. I was just studying on the fertilizer subsidies, 185,000, 1,85,000 crore business in India. And the way it works is it's totally offline, while government wants to do it online. So maybe I'll take 30 seconds how it works. So there are 60 manufacturers of these fertilizers. Now, they get a subsidy when the end farmer actually consumes it, but there's no way to track this entire chain. So what these people, so for example, a sack of a fertilizer it costs 10 rupees, and if it is consumed by the farmer, so you have to sell it to the farmer at 2 rupees, and 8 rupees you will get a subsidy from the government. But this entire chain of 2 rupees from manufacturer to distributor, distributor to retailer, retailer to farmer. Only when farmer puts up a thumb on some devices which is records at NIC level, only then the manufacturer gets his subsidy. So it's now onus is on the manufacturer to ensure he tracks this entire chain. Not the money, it's just the consumption part of it. That, okay, I have bought this, not the money tracking. So the entire tracking of the money, today, money tracking is totally either on a cash or totally on a different, some on digital. There's no uniformity. So one is handling the entire cash ecosystem. The second one is handling the entire consumption ecosystem, that until the farmer says, yeah, I have got this, it's now I'm using it, only then manufacturer. I'm sure the people who are getting the subsidy will be the biggest one to kind of invest in this technology. So one of my colleague, in fact, he was with me in the car when I was coming. He is managing 18 manufacturers, and that's what he was telling me. So he is now built his own business. So he has entire credit history of all those 18 manufacturers, 35,000 distributors, and almost 4 lakhs retailers, but he doesn't have information about the farmer. He has a live information about these people. But this entire, and his business prevails only to call these people and ensure that this ecosystem is done. The last person in the chain, farmer, once he puts his thumb onto the biometric, just for acknowledging, yes, I have got this bag, then only he will get subsidy. So I'm thinking this is a big area for this. And likewise, any subsidy area, as Manish rightly said, where government wants to actually ensure that things are being done in the right way, this is the best way to do it.
So what I'm seeing is that the use cases are actually enormous. It's not that one more credit card or one more savings account. We're talking of billions of dollars, these examples that you're sharing.
So there's one. I'm not from an end user product perspective, but I'm trying to wear my operations hat over here to see what is the problem that at least the large global banks that I've worked in the past, a common problem which we face on a day-to-day basis. How do I bring onboarding, sanctions, credit screening together? Because onboarding is a big problem. Credit screening, again, you have multiple platforms where you have to do a credit screening to understand the credit profile of the customer. And third, which is the sanctions part of it. So these are 3 big operational pain areas in any bank. And there are large teams managing these aspects and also prone to a lot of risk associated with any kind of slippages in any of these 3 areas. So it's actually very material in nature. When we say, kind of work, it's a material kind of a work. So if there's some system which is built, which will give me this easily, I put in the customer name and registration, because I'm institutional and corporate banking is what we deal with. If I provide the company's details, will it give this entire portfolio or a view, a profile of this entire customer to me? That will make my life so easier in any bank. And I don't see a reason why it won't be loved by the business teams or even the board, because it's going to bring in cost efficiency. It's going to minimize the time taken to onboarding or time taken to, kind of sanction a line to the corporate. So it's a good thing if we have one like that.
So I'll just pursue a little bit more on this, and this is also one of the pain points that a lot of banks are undergoing in India. Like I said, all these IT companies or big players have become a kind of a IT mafias. Likewise, today data providers have become a data mafias, and this is the word used by one of the CEOs. And then that's a problem, because and in fact they are trying to do something with an IBA to create. So today what happens is, for example, I'll take one bank. If they want to get the credit data for a particular customer for their product, liability is now going to be, again, government is asking that, RBI is asking that for liability also you need to do the credit check. For a retail customers as well. So it will get into a thing. For lending, obviously it is a part. Now, at the portfolio level, for cards, business unit will have their own way of getting the data. So at an organization layer, there is no single contract, which is, you can say it's a problem with an organization, but there are no single. The credit card will have its own relationship with the bureaus, lending teams will have, and again the other bureaus. So that's becoming a problem in terms of the cost efficiencies. So this is a problem which the CEO level are facing, that they are looking out if there are some platform which can come in, which can help them to kind of get these services at the fastest, as well as at the cost efficiency layer. One of the bank I'm talking about, they spend almost an annual 120 crores to Perfios to give them the data or the leads which are existing in the bank itself. 70% of them are, so they are selling the same leads to them. So they are saying, okay, it's become a problem for us on that front. So all these data providers or aggregators, while they have earned what they have earned or where they have reached at this level, but they have become, again, so big that the big banks, including the private sector senior big banks, have become facing it as a challenge with them. And so I can tell you, the banks, top 5 PSU banks spend close to 500 crores a year just to get the data information out from these players, 2 players.
Interesting.
This is the information available at the DFS. The 5 banks, including the SBI, they pay a huge bomb.
I think this roundtable can go on and on, but let's try to.
So one thing I would like to. Yeah, sorry.
1 minute each.
Yeah, so quickly, from my domain, I see 2 more potential use cases which will help in optimizing and enhancing the revenue stream. One, it would be the cross-border remittance or money settlement, which is an interbank settlement. But I feel bringing tokenization, and I guess in some part of some certain geographies, some larger institutions might have already started, is what I read somewhere. But then in general, if you see, this will help enormously in terms of getting the real-time money settlement on a cross-border transfer basis. So that is one potential use case which will help in revenue enhancement, I foresee. Second, you would have heard about the traditional non-fund-based banking instruments like bonds, guarantees, LCs, and all that. So these are normally, whenever we issue it traditionally in a digital form, but these are being issued on a one-to-one basis, 1:1. So if we can bring customization, tokenization also in between, that can also become a dynamic instrument in nature that can be used by the client or the corporate to, let's say, 5 different parties, depending upon the need. So this is what I could kind of think of, using tokenization as the background technology, and this will all actually help not only solving the pain point of many external clients or audience, it will also help bank in increasing or enhancing the revenue streams.
Good examples, Nitin. Thank you.
And just to the remittances, we did a lot of sort of analysis on that. By the time it gets from one country back and then has to go into an intermediary, it can be upwards of 20%, and then the tracking of that. And then obviously once it goes on the network here, it's free. Not free, but across the network, but then you can put in your gas fees or so forth. But we did a lot of work on looking at remittances, and there are a few countries or banks that are looking into that now, but it's a huge one.
Yeah. So when I look at your the tokenized tomorrow, the title, what you are saying, what we visualize in the days to come is whoever the borrower comes to us, probably gives some kind of collateral to us. So we presume that collateral can be tokenized, And why we would like to do that immediately? If the borrower has not paid in next 3 months, say for example, that part of the tokenized collateral can be encashed, and my part of NPAs, if you look at it, we can have a zero NPA status if all the loans are collateralized properly. And that will be a biggest benefit as far as this structure is concerned. This is what we are looking at, this tokenized tomorrow.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, in fact, I'll build on this. This is where I'll combine what Darius was talking about earlier, which is reducing the overheads with respect to tokenized assets, and then building on to, leveraging that partial assets, right, in downstream use cases. Supply chain finance, right? Supply chain finance, when you look at it, tier 1 suppliers definitely take advantage of the POs they get from a large manufacturer. And they're able to get the credit lines for it, right? But they also have tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers who don't get that same benefit because the asset which is that PO doesn't actually translate down, even though they're servicing that same order chain. Tokenized assets can make that process a lot more simple and make that credit available across that chain. And same thing can apply in trade finance and a whole series of other areas, which now become new revenue streams for banks without taking on additional risks. I'll leave it there. We can, of course, talk a lot more about it.
Yeah. Just to take his point forward, that cross-border CBDC, what he talked about, what we visualize in the days to come. So here, the most important point is the regulator. So once the regulators are ready to accept the cross-border CBDC as a part of, the journey to settle the settlements at apex level. So what we visualize is, look at 140 central banks coming into one DTSP layer, one centralized layer they're coming out. So if my daughter is somewhere in London, want to send some £1,000 to me, so she just handed over £1,000 to their central regulator, and just imagine that central regulator checks all the KYC related part of it, scrubbing of the data, analysis of all the whatever is there is inbuilt into the system. That central bank will have, with Indian central bank, say for example, visualize the rates are being whatever taken out by the central banks as a bucket, and it gets automatically created to my wallet in India. Because the wallet, whatever happening is, it is the balance sheet for the central bank. So I am holding on behalf of the central bank. Our central bank is holding on my behalf, kind of thing. So visualize this kind of structure where whole universe became a small village, and everybody in the same DTSP layer. Just to keep a payment platform, somebody has to do this wonderful thing. Some payment platform like NPCI in India, likewise somebody has to be taken care of. So replacing all the traditional systems, and this is one of the finest platform. This is the tokenized tomorrow. What we are looking at.
Thank you. Thank you all for a lovely conversation. The impression I'm getting from all of this is 2025 was a year of Trump and tariff. 2026 looks to be the year of tokenization. Does that make sense from what all we have discussed? Yeah, so let's look forward to tokenization and to the many benefits that seem possible from this. Truly a revolutionary concept, and it's so simple actually. If it's not, don't need like a quantum technology to do tokens, or you don't need whatever NVIDIA chips to do that. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So the possibilities are huge. I think this is like that first principles thing. If you do it right, you can really scale it up. Thank you all once again for a lovely conversation.